Yes, wonderful, good. Okay, we got it right now. We're streaming. Yeah, welcome everyone. And today we'll be talking about how groups work. So far what we've done is look at individual charts. We've sort of touched on how two charts work together. So one-on-one. Two individuals talking to each other. We've also, and I'm just going to go back to sharing that. We talked last time about how mammals, single cells, plants, etc. work. And just to show you, remind you here, mammals only have 16 gates. So what is black? Black means just that these are possibilities. Most mammals are reflectors and they don't have anything defined, but these are the possible 16 gates, I think, that mammals could have defined. They don't have the possibility of any other channels being defined. And just to notice here, this one, 15.5, this channel is part of the mammals, and it's the channel that it has a flow, it has a rhythm, it's a life energy. And even a single cell, this is the only matrix it has. It has one hanging gate and it has one channel, which is the 15.5. So even a 15.5 has that rhythm, that flow that makes it alive. And here we have, yeah, sort of all of them. We can see fish, reptiles. They have the 15.5. We have mammals, they have the 15.5. The plants have the 15.5. The only ones that don't have the 15.5, this channel of flow and of rhythm, are the inanimate objects. They just have one little gate. Here, plants, insects, they have that 15.5. So these are different auras, and this is what Ra was given. He was given these different auras. And today we're going to look at another kind of different aura. These auras are transauric auras. It's when a few auras come together. So when we have the individual who has its own aura, its own chart. Then we have two people coming together where two individuals meet one-on-one. You're still individuals, but you meet and you figure things out in that aura. And then what happens when we're 3 people or 4 people or 5 people? The whole thing changes. And you may know that what it's like, 2 people have an intense communication and it's very individual. It's from one person to the other. There's communication between 2 individuals. And as soon as a third person enters that, the whole thing changes. The whole thing changes into what we call a penta. Pentas are groups of people of 3, 4, or 5. And the penta becomes, it's like an aura of itself, of its own. And you might know that as soon as there's 3 people, the conversations aren't really between individuals. It's almost like something higher is moving, is taking over, is arranging how these 3 auras work together. I personally find it fascinating that, you know, when you go into Men in Black or ETs or whatever, very often they come in 3s. So as soon as there's threes, something different happens. It's not anymore about the individual person so much, but about a direction that the group takes. So when we look at threes, if you have three people, you have a triangle, and you can only always look at one other person. You can't really look at both of them at the same time. And so usually what happens is it goes around the circle. These two talk to each other, and then the other two talk to each other, and the third two talk to each other. And the aura of a triangle is wanting to pull in a fourth person. It's attracting, it's wanting, four people. So very often, if you're, let's say you're in a house and people are mingling, let's say a party or so, or a family or so on, you have two people, they talk to each other, and it's almost like it's difficult for a third person coming in, but the third person comes in. Let's say the first baby comes into the relationship of a family, and everything changes. So if you have a family and a young child comes in, that first young child dominates the functioning of that penta. And then it's looking for that fourth person. Three people sitting at a table at a party, a fourth person comes, or one person leaves. The four is quite stable. You can have two people and two people talking to each other. It's still a penta. It's still not very individual, but you have something that is stable. And as soon as, and yet, you've got four people. It's that penta, that transauric field is looking for stability or insurance. Let's say insurance, and they're looking for a fifth person to come in, just in case. Just in case something happens to one of the others, they need to go to the toilet or they need to go home or whatever. You have just in case that fifth person. And yet it's not stable. So as soon as you have five people, and we did have a group of actually 6 people last night, and we were for a meditation we were doing, and you mingle first and you mingle after the meditation, and you will notice that there's the 6 people will split into 2 and 2 and 2, or 3 and 3, or 4 and 2. 6 doesn't work. It just doesn't. It doesn't stay. And with 5 too, you have 5 people. There'll be one person getting up and moving along this way or needing to do that, and it all sounds very reasonable. But what it actually is just the way that transauric field works. Now here we see the design of a transauric field, like we saw with the mammals and plants and so on. The basic matrix is different. So the basic matrix of mammals is that they can have a maximum of 16 gates and a few channels. Now, when you look at the penta, when 3, 4, or 5 people come together, this is the possibility of channels and gates that this penta can have. It's the power column in the center. It's the G center. And again, we have the 15-5 here. It's alive. It has its rhythm. It has its own quality of life. And yet all the other stuff that's missing, for example, what it is missing is awareness. So if you remember, we had splenic awareness in that brown triangle on the left. The splenic awareness was this, it's almost like an intuition. It's a physical awareness. It's a sort of an intuition. I need to do this. I need to jump out of the road of the car coming. I need to check something, and lo and behold, it's life-saving. It's that type of awareness. And then there's the awareness up here in the ajna, the mind that is thinking and is able to be self-aware. Well, the Penta is not aware of itself. It doesn't have that intuition, that splenic awareness. It does not have a mind. It's not aware of itself. And it doesn't have emotions. It is not aware of emotions. What it does have is direction and two love gates, two love channels. If you go back to the YouTube we did on 2027, we talk a lot about the G center and those gates and what they mean. And we talk about the vessel of love. So the vessel of love is 4 gates in the G center. We have 2 of them here. We have the 15 and the 14. They are 2 of the gates of the vessel of love. The other 2 are not part of the Penta. The other 2, there's the 10 here that is behavior. So the Penta is not concerned with behavior on that level. And we have the 25 here that is, like if you remember, the inanimate has that gate. So it's not it doesn't have that energy. It has the energy of the 15, the love of humanity, the love of everything, the up and the down and the big and the small, just all encompassing love. And it has the love of the body. And the other 4, these, the 7, 1, 13 and the 2 are the gates of the Sphinx. And the Sphinx is about direction. Which direction do I take? So what a Penta does, when we are in a Penta, if we're in more than 2 people, so 3, 4, and 5, there's a direction that happens. Which direction do we take? Where do we go? What's happening? And you can think of it like a trident. So this would be the stem of the trident, and then for 3, it's like a fork. This is also how the energy flows in the Penta. There's it starts with a vortex in here, an energy vortex, and then it goes into the 15, and I'll just show you this to you. No, let's see this one. So it comes in from this vortex. It comes in this way and goes up. It comes in this way and goes up. And here it goes into the 3 different channels that go upwards. So, yeah. Do you have to add at this point, Lorenz? And you're muted.
Maybe, yeah, thank you. Maybe just to reiterate that there's a lot missing of the Penta, and what in the end it's for is direction. Una said that, I'm just repeating it. So all about the Penta is what direction we take, and that is governed not by us as individuals, but by us coming together as groups. It's kind of almost a direction that's pressed upon the members of this group. So yeah, just to be aware that once we come together and we create the Penta, there is a lot that for us is normal, that is not anymore of any consideration, like thoughts. There's no heart, so there's no ego, there's no will, there's no awareness, as Una said, neither bodily or mind, and there's no emotions. There is only direction and the possibility to to satisfy the material needs for that direction and the possibility to manifest the direction. That's all that moves us when we are in groups. And of course, our individual energies, they play into that and shine through. But once we become aware of how this part of group mechanic really works, which is never talked about. I have been around in community fields, which are all about groups. But of course, that knowledge isn't there then. And I would imagine that would have been very helpful.
Yeah, that awareness. It's actually, I really enjoy watching pentas, sitting in a restaurant and watching how pentas happen. People come in, people go out, or being at parties and seeing a penta from the outside. So not being part, but observing others. But also I remember sitting in a group of 5 in Kenya last year. And that sense, that feeling, it was a penta that had all channels defined. And for me, the sense was very, very comfortable. For others, it might not be comfortable. We'll go more into that. Also, yes, picking up on what is actually there. We do have the sacral, we have that motor, we have that generative motor, and we have the G center, the monopole that gives direction, love, and we have the throat through which we manifest. So there is this basic upwards movement from 14 to 2 to 7, 1, and 13. That energy to come out into it, and manifest something. So think of families, think of businesses that want to manifest something. It becomes really worthwhile looking at how these energies work. Yes, also there's no root, and there's no the top one. So there's no pressure from those sides. The pressure that we usually feel on a daily basis, having to hurry or do things, that's just not part of this transauric, I'm going to call it a being. It has an existence, and this existence is almost like the individuals within that penta are parts of that bigger field. Now, when you look at how that is done in if you take 5 people, so you take 5 people and look at their charts. So here you would have the person who's green may have this part defined, this part, and a whole channel here. The next person will be the person in blue that will have these parts defined. All the way to maximum 5 people. And so then what you look at is what is missing. Here we have this gate. We don't have a full channel. We have, as a penta, we're looking at this part missing. And that's where the energy goes. That's where the attention goes. It's not that anything is broken, like we know in the individual charts. There's nothing broken, there's nothing wrong. But the energy will go into why is this part not happening? Why is this not working? Why is nobody taking care of this part of what the penta does? Just see this slide. Yes, I showed that to you in this slide. Yeah, this shows the vortex and the energies again coming out this way and moving up the alpha key. into this side here is all about experience. This side here is all about the flow. And I think let's go back to maybe this one. Or no, let's go to this one here. So what Ra did is he looked closely at how families work, and he looked closely at how businesses work. And we looked at the Penta a while ago, like over a year ago, didn't we, Lorenz, when we were in Kenya with Eileen? And yeah, and now it's coming up again. We're grouping in bigger groups. And so looking at this, let's start with the 15.5. And I know, Susan, you have the 15.5. This is about the flow and the pattern.
One second. Before we go into all the individual gates and all the meaning of the individual gates, I want to say again that how do we have to imagine the Penta form? So if you look at a human, you have a fixed circuit board, you have this fixed pattern, as Una said, we have all these gates, they never change, they're always activated within us. And with Penta, you have something very, very different. It is never fixed. It is always changing, because it's made up of the activations of the people that are together in that moment in these 6 channels. So if, let's say, just for example, Una, me, and Susie were in one room, we would have certain activations in these 6 channels, like Una showed before with these wonderful colors. Now, if one of us goes out, which is very likely if we're 3, it becomes a relationship. It's not a Penta anymore. So you don't have to look at that chart anymore. And it's us dealing as individuals again. If you're 4, if somebody comes in and we're 4, the whole Penta changes. The energy of the Penta changes. How it pressures us changes. And then if a 5th person comes again, it changes again. And if one leaves, it changes again. So if you imagine, as Una said, this is done with businesses and families most often. If you look at a family of 5 people, for example, you can't just look at all the charts together and they create this. You need to be aware that it is always changing, depending on the configuration of the different people that are together at one point. Or if you're in a bar and you're meeting with friends, it always changes according to who comes and who goes, and even who is going to the toilet. So it is a very different kind of structure that we're looking at than when we're looking at people, at humans. It's almost, you could say, it is something non-human. It is something very, very, very different that has a big influence over us. And how this influence can show itself in the different configurations. So let's say, just as examples, in family and business, because that is most often what Pentas are used for, so to say, why we come together is either as a family or to make business. And Ra gave us themes that for the individual gates and channels, when we come together in these ways.
Yeah. This is the fascinating thing I find. It's the Penta is not, that's probably why it's not embodied. It's because it's constantly changing. We can observe how the conversation changes. So let's let's say, like I have this channel. And I walk out, and let's say nobody else has this channel. There's nothing defined in there anymore by anybody else. Then all of a sudden, the talk will be about the topic of what's missing here. I come back in, the talk will move to something else that's missing. Susie has this channel. She walks out, and all of a sudden, everybody will be talking about this and what's missing here.
Yeah, in that sense, it's
So,
very similar to not self. So when we talk about the not self in a human chart, in our body graph, it's the same in the pentagraph. What is missing is what we spend most energy looking for.
yeah, and with the Penta, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, it would take everybody within the Penta to have very high consciousness of and knowledge of human design pentas. And then possibly one could experiment with, would we be able to move away from being a not self penta? It would be fascinating to actually be in a fully conscious, a fully aware group of people creating a penta and see what happens then. Do we still move towards where the lack is? Yeah, and let's see, let's go to this woman. Are we ready to go into the individual gates and channels a little bit? Yeah, okay. So 15.5, the channel that all animate things have. So only the inanimate have the hanging gate 25. Everything else has the 15.5, not activated, not defined, but as a possibility. So the 15.5, it's about the rhythm, it's about the pattern, it's about the flow, it's how things, in what rhythm are things done? Are they, do we all eat fast or get dinner over with? Or do we eat slowly? Do we, when we go out, does it take us half an hour, or are we ready within 3 minutes? As a group, as a penta, the rhythm of how we speak. Do we speak slowly? Do we speak fast? Do we, all of that is in the 15.5. And it's about what happens within the group, what happens within that penta. What is home life like? Here we see 5, it's the home, it's the, in the business, it's the culture, it's the within culture. How do we do things?
And there's, for me, where the fun starts with the penta. If you imagine now you're sitting at the table as a family and the father has the 15.5. Now, none of the others have the 15.5, but the father has the whole channel. And the father likes, in the first 15 minutes, to have absolute silence to listen to the radio. That's his rhythm. And even though that is not my rhythm at all, I mean, it's different if it's the father because he has actually the power to also make that happen. But even if it is the son, the 5-year-old, who has a certain rhythm at the table, everybody else becomes slaves, so to speak, to that rhythm. And there is nothing anybody can do. So if the son has a certain rhythm in eating, the whole family will be subject to that rhythm because it's in the penta. And that is the power that the penta has over groups of people.
Yeah, yeah. I love it because I can feel within me, I don't have the 15 or the 5. I can feel within me that is not lacking, but it's not there. And then when I'm in the presence of somebody with a 15.5, I love that. I love being defined by that other. My daughter has the 15.5. Maybe we can also just back up and just generally say that the top 3 channels manage the lower 3 channels. They sort of they manage, they guide, they have that direction for the lower 3 channels. And again, what I can say there, I have nothing up here. I do have the full channel here, and I have it with several different planets inside. It's a very strong channel for me. The sun is in there also for me, so it's very strong. But I do love being managed by people who are correct and have definition, who have activation up here. Yes, so what is the 4629 about? So the energies are coming in through the 15.5 and the 6429. So the 46 is about discovery and coordination. It's about homogenizing, about making everybody work together in harmony. It's out, and it's out. It's not in the home, it's out in the world. And the 29 is about commitments, commitment to being in harmony, to working well outside, going outside of the home, going outside of the family, going out of the Penta. And this is, looking back on my life, exactly what I've been doing. I've always been going out of the Penta, out to explore, out to travel, to even as a young child, I remember, the first few weeks of going to school, having to cross roads on my own, and I decided to take another way home than the one that I was shown, just to explore the world. And of course, everybody at home got very worried, and come home to a place that is subdued and angry, and nobody's speaking to me. And the father comes home and asks what happened, and I pipe up and say, I did want to see the world, which released the tension. But it's exactly what I like to do. I do love going out into the world and exploring the world. And I do have very strong commitments. Commitments not for forever, but commitments for this experience. If I decide to go out and do this, I have a commitment to push through, put my shoulder to the wheel, push through that experience that I'm having. Lorenz, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, it's in the family configuration. So there is a genetic use case, so to speak, for all these different energies. And in the family Penta configuration, it is showing the children as a family unit the world outside. So for example, as a family making a trip to the zoo, or making a trip to the art gallery, and then experiencing life as a Penta, but in the outside world. And of course, that gives a lot of perspective. Suddenly, your father has to answer to the policeman, but at home, he is the policeman, or whatever role he also takes. So this kind of preparing the children in going out into the world, for showing what is outside of the family home, which is on the left side. And Pentas have a big homogenizing pressure on each other. So if you imagine the English suburb, where there is houses that look exactly the same, with the grass exactly the same way, if you as a family Penta have some of these channels missing, let's say you're missing the 15.5, you don't have a specific flow at home, and not a specific frequency at home, that might mean that it's quite chaotic. It might be a dirty house. It might be always different when somebody comes to visit. And the other pentas, they will put pressure to homogenize in that respect. It's this talking, the neighbors looking out the window and talking about what they see and trying to align the penta with all the other penta frequencies that are around. If somebody clips the grass 5 millimeters shorter, everybody goes out and clips the grass 5 millimeters shorter. And this is just to put awareness to the pressure of this frequency. That is not a fixed rule, but this is how we all can feel when we feel pressure to behave in a certain way as a group. How do you behave as a family? How do you behave as a business? How do you behave as a group of friends? There is a pressure to behave in certain ways that is relative to where you are at and how all the other pentas behave.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yes, it's so important with whom we form pentas, because there's that transauric field that happens. Yes, and also, yeah, the 29, this here is meant to say 29. It's not a 9, it's a 20.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I didn't get the question right then.
And yeah, like Lorenz says, it's not about going to the zoo or to the museum. It's about how that group meets with something from the outside. How does you're going out to the world, you're a group, you're a family, you're a business going out into the world. How do you interact with what's coming to you outside on the street, you're going to another business meeting, how does the business itself, that group, interact? So yes, and the more that is defined, the more that is activated in that penta, the better the penta actually functions. Ra actually says if all those channels are activated in the penta, it's functional. And anytime there's something missing, it's dysfunctional. That's the words he uses. Okay.
And of course, you never get a functional family in that sense.
Well, I guess years ago, we used to have, well, maybe you don't. If you have more than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children, it's still always changing and mutating as to how things comes. The new baby is born, the older one leaves home, and so on. The likelihood of definition is bigger. But again, when it's more than 5, you split into 2 pentas. And then there's a bigger thing after that. When you reach more than 16 people, you have another transauric field, and we'll talk about that at some other point. So at the moment, yes, we can have up to 3 pentas. So that's 5. That's 3 times 5, that's 15, plus 1 extra person guiding the 3 pentas. But let's just go through the channels. The 14, 2. The 14, it demands that there's material, right? It demands the money, that money is being made. It demands that things happen. It demands that that this all comes down into the material plane. So the 14-2, you could also, in business, the two is called vision. So the 14 demands that the vision comes into existence. This is the energy coming up. And then it splits into the channel 31-7. Do you have anything on the 14-2, Lorenz, that you wanted to add there?
No.
The 7-31, the channel of the alpha. Okay, here we're going into these three channels of managing, of leadership, in a way. And it's about administration, it's about order, it's about discipline, it's about being organized, it's about being logical, it's about looking into the future and how do we organize ourselves. So the Penta is this is where the Penta is being organized. It's in the family, discipline is a big word. But it's also about organization there. It's about how do you know what is done when. Do you have a chart that says when meals are being taken, or is there a chart for who has to do what and when? That's this channel. Then the 1333, that's an interesting one. The 13 is about secrets, about not saying things. It's like a family has secrets. A business might have secrets too. An individual might have secrets, and it's not like it's necessarily some major thing that you should never ever say, and that's shaming or blaming or anything like that. It's just that it's not coming out. It's not being spoken. It can be as simple as you're answering the phone and you're taking a message, and then you're not passing the message on. Not because there's a problem, it's just because you have the gate 13.
No, you don't have it. It's when you don't have it that the secrets are the 13. If the 13 is activated, especially in the family, it is a pressure to uphold clarity, so to speak, to the pressure to open up so that things are said and distributed. And if it's missing, this energy isn't there. So everybody has secrets and is bothered by it. Everybody, there is secrets, everybody knows there's secrets, and everybody thinks there shouldn't be secrets. So it is an energy that is missing for clarity if the 13 is not defined. At least that's how it works in a family.
Yes, and in a business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the 33 is the past. So here we have the future in this channel, the 731. In the 1333, we have the past, the experiences we've had, the experiences of the family, the experiences of the business, looking through old photographs, talking to grandmothers so that you know what her grandmother said, the traditions being passed on. This is the way we've always done it, and so this is the way we're going to do it again. And so you've got an oversight over what's happened in the past, what has been done already in the business. You need to know what has been done so that we then can know how to project into the future. Yeah, and then we have the 1-8. The 1 is, it's creative. It's a creative force going forward. It's creating what needs to go out, what needs to be demonstrated in the 8. So you've got to demonstrate that you're a good family you've got to demonstrate that you're a good business. You've got to, as a business, you need to show how wonderful you are, how good you are, so that people will come and want to partake of your business, so that you can sell things. This is the show. This is making a show of what this Penta is. It's it's basically your public relations person. Public relations person absolutely needs to have the 8. They're the ones who go out and tell everybody how wonderful this business is. It's yes, and families who don't have that, they don't care how they look on the outside. They don't need to tell everybody what a wonderful family they are, and that the kids are behaving and everybody's got a good education, and they have absolutely no need. They're perfectly happy with a house that is deteriorating, or not being on their best behavior necessarily, or whatever. That's the 8 missing.
Well, they don't think they have to, but the grandmother might think differently and is worried that they are not displaying the correct behavior of a functioning normal family. And that's, I find that a very interesting, this interplay of if the demonstration, so the demonstration in the Penta is basically demonstrating that, look, we are individual as a family, that's the one. We are like you, but a bit different. You don't buy the same car as the neighbor. You would never do that. But if you have the 1/8 buying a new car, saying, look, we're well off, we can afford a new car, but we are not like you, we are slightly different. It is displaying to all the other Pentas around, everything is in order, no need to worry. And we fit right in, basically. And if any of these energies are missing, there is no, as Una said, there is no energy to do that. But there is an awareness that it is expected, and a potential for the family to then nag within and put too much effort in trying to fill the energies that are simply missing.
Yeah. Yeah. What else can we say? I think I don't actually have anything more to say on the Penta at the moment.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Biljaka or Susie?
Oh, maybe I do. I know I have the 30. So the grandmother, who, if she's not living in the same house as the family, it's when you go out into the world, 4629, you go visit grandmother, traditions, 33, and you get the family ready for going to grandmother, and grandmother insists on traditions, right? This is how we've always done, and she needs to know that the children are doing well, they're fed well, they're raised well, and all of that. This is where that comes in. The photographs and what Aunt so-and-so did 50 years ago, and how so-and-so was when she was a child, and she hasn't changed. And this is also why, the Penta, so you grow up together as children, and you just know how this Penta works. That's just a comfortable zone, because that's how it's always worked for you. So then I remember my grandmother had 2 sisters. Okay, so these two, when the 3 of them got together, it was like little children, and nothing had ever changed. And they would tell me how they were as little children, and this one was like this, and the other one was the baby of the family, always charming and always getting whatever she wanted. and the middle one was always the serious one, and so on. And as soon as they got together as in a threesome, it was as though they were little children, saying the same things, accusing each other of the same things, probably of wherever something was missing in their penta of 3. So that's why it's so hard going back into the family. If you want to change, if you want to be a different person, you go back into the family and you feel like you're still the same. And that's why it's so important to choose well who is in your environment. Does this actually work together? And how high is the awareness? Is there an awareness for this is a penta and there's something missing? And our energy obviously always goes to that which is missing, or can we change that? Or can we group together in a group that has everything covered, and then see how that works? So I've done that once. If 5 people together, everything, all the channels were covered, and I'll be doing it again this weekend, and I'm very much looking forward to that and experiencing that kind of grouping of 5 people.
Yeah, just one thing to that, because I think it's funny too. Like you go back to family reunion and you have all the same haggles. I go back, meet with my mom and my dad, and we eat, and they start haggling like they did before. And there can be this question like, what is it? What's wrong with me, or what's wrong with the family, or what's wrong with anything? Why does it happen? Why has it not changed? And it's very possible that it is because of the penta. In a family, you don't choose the penta you're born into. So you're stuck with that penta until you leave or change it in some way. That works different with friends. For example, if you don't like the penta energy that you're in, you don't have to necessarily. If somebody comes in your penta and it changes the penta in a way that you don't like, you can expel the person again. You can't do that with family. So it's if certain patterns are resurfacing when you meet again as a family, it could be that it is because of the penta. And that has some interesting implications as well. If you want to talk to somebody about something and you can't reach them in the penta configuration, try talking to them one-on-one. It is a completely different energy. And then there is another side of it. The struggle, you could say, or it's not a struggle. There is a certain pattern in pentas that shows, depending on how many members you are and how many centers you have defined. I don't think we will go into all of that, but just so you know that it's there. If you're a penta if you build a penta with 3 people and all of your centers are defined from these 3 people, you have a certain mechanism. And if you are together as 3 people, but only 8 out of the 9 centers in the body graph, and there we're talking about the centers in the human body graph, are defined, it's a different set of challenges. Challenges, I think, is the right word, that you meet again and again and again and again. And it is very helpful to look at these, because they also give an explanation for certain patterns to show themselves that you don't necessarily have to look at and try to solve, because that's just how a penta configuration with 3 and all centers defined works.
Yes, it's also people who have no definition here in this power column. They're not penta people. They just don't have any power when they're in a penta. they probably feel bulldozed and probably avoid being in groups that are, small groups, anything between 3 and 15, which would be three pentas. We go into the bigger one once we above 16. Yeah. So it's, if somebody doesn't want to partake, you're having a small party, a small invitation, just a few people, and there's people who don't really want to come. It may be because they just have no power in the penta. There's no energy that where they feel comfortable within the penta. Now, I'd be really curious. I'm sure, Biriaka, you've got thoughts on all of this and experiences and anything. Is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I don't have many centers. I have only 3, but no whole line.
Well, good. Which ones do you have?
I have the 1, 13, and 15.
Great. Yeah.
These 3 I have.
Yeah.
And I just was thinking, perhaps with the witches, that could have a connection with that.
Absolutely, yes.
What happened with that? And I wanted to speak 101. So perhaps that is why.
Yeah, absolutely. You wanted to solve that problem one-on-one, and
Yeah.
that probably would have worked, because as soon as you're in the penta, and if the other people have full channels or a lot of activations in this power channel, you may be flattened by that.
Yeah. I don't know their chart, but would be interesting to see it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So if I have only these 3, so the most time I'm flattened.
Well, 3, there's lots and lots of people who have only 3. Okay, doesn't have the power of the full channel, but
No.
The people I really feel for are the people who only have 1 gate or no gate at all. Because it's I don't really know the statistics. I can just go by all the charts that I've seen. And I would say having 3 to 5 is sort of average. I mean, it's only, what is it? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 12 gates. You've got 3 of 12.
But no channel.
No channel. But Lorenz doesn't have any channels either. Lorenz, let me see if I can bring all of that up. The charts.
I find that very interesting. We talked a little bit, Una and me, how pentas feel for us, and I think they feel pretty different. As Una said, she likes certain energies of aware pentas she's actually very happy with. And of course, I also enjoy being in an aligned group that just works well. For me, in general, it feels a little bit, I would say, rather on the uncomfortable side rather than on the comfortable side. And how it is to me is like and it might also mirror in our chart. So we have to experiment with all of that. It feels to me like my individuality doesn't matter. My uniqueness doesn't matter. It's not about my uniqueness anymore. It's about the group purpose. And for limited endeavors, I would say I find that interesting, but I wouldn't want too much of that in my life. I don't like that level of pressure and homogenization. And I know that Ra, who only had one gate, he was very adamant about it as well, that he has all this power and he's this this teacher and mystic who brings human design and hundreds of people listening to him. He goes home to his family, he's the cuddly dog. Like everybody steps on his tail. He has one gate, he has absolutely nothing to say and no power of how things are run in the house. And also as an individual, he has a lot of individuality in his chart that didn't necessarily feel very comfortable. And Una, for example, has a lot of tribal activations in her chart. So that might be something that feels a bit different.
Yeah.
Can this change over the years? Because when I think through my life, it changes. I felt very comfortable in groups, but now it's changing a little bit.
When you talk about groups, what size groups are you talking about?
Groups, different groups. If
More than
it's
16 or less?
huh?
More than 16 or less? More
No,
than
less.
9?
Less.
Okay. So one thing could also be is that you're becoming more aware of who you are and cherishing that individuality. Often when we grow up in a family, we don't spend much time on our own, really, in our own aura. And so we don't really know who we are. We don't have a sense for our uniqueness, our individuality, until we often, grow up and live by ourselves for a bit. So then we start treasuring that individuality. We know who we are. We don't, we're comfortable with it sometimes.
Mm. So when I go back to my dad, I will look the chart of him. Perhaps I will have there also answers.
Yes, and you see, as I'm flipping through here, 3 is pretty much average. Right?
Mm.
Like I have only 2, but it's a channel. We've got 3 here. We've got 3 here. We've got a channel here. This person is definitely, Marlene is definitely a Penta person. Lots of influence in small groups. Here, 3. So it's pretty standard. It's a matter of whom you take it into, who do you spend time with? With whose aura do you gather?
Mm.
And then, is this a direction that you as an individual want to take too? Because the direction of the Penta may be different from the direction of what you want when you're all by yourself. Your direction in life.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
lots to think about.
Absolutely. In general, I think it is a very good additional kind of thing to be able to track for the exact reason that Una just mentioned, because thinking about something and feeling about something when you're alone might be different than when you're in a group. And knowing where that comes from and knowing that there is this mechanical difference, I think that is valuable. That's a valuable addition to what we can put awareness on, and may explain some of the movements we see, some of the patterns we see when people come together and become take on certain energies.
Yes, and how the conversation changes when one person leaves, because the energy is drawn to a different part, and depending on who leaves, somebody with a a great Penta activation in the power column, and they leave and the conversation changes immediately. I was observing that last night.
And my activated centers are mostly outside of the Penta.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah.
But you have, see, what you have is a lot of awareness about yourself. You put that mind defined. And if it's part of how your mind works, if your mind is interested in it, then it could be that, like me, you're starting to notice these Penta energies. You're noticing that, you're noticing the Penta. I can't call it a consciousness because it doesn't have consciousness, but it is animate. It has the 15.5. It's an animate object, and that fascinates me. Just tuning into that from the outside. You know?
Yeah, I will see, play around.
Yes, absolutely. I just find it's fun to experiment. Susie, do you have insights, comments, questions, anything? No? Okay. Good. Then I'll say thank you to everyone who's been watching. Share your comments. Let us know what's going on, how you see it, because we're still just really fully in experimenting with the Penta, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. And let's see.